Before we get started, I want to personally invite you to join me for a live Fintech Leaders recording with Mike Seckler, CEO of JustWorks, one of the largest tech and fintech companies built in New York City. Join us at Barclays Rise in the heart of New York City on Tuesday, April 9 at 4 p.m. You can visit the show notes on Substack to register for free. See you there.
Every time we launch an additional service, from 45 to 65% of the monthly active user jump on that. So this is really strengthening our relationship with our users. We simply built on the fact that a lot of friends were telling us, oh, it's so cool that you left your previous job, you're giving everything for it, can I invest? So in 2013, we shoot a video with my iPhone and we send it to 60 friends and 52 of them invested. Very little amount, and we raised 300,000 euros. Really helped us grow and become immediately the app to pay your coffee, which is obviously not the final ambition, but if you want to become a daily behavior, and in Italy people tell they're using you to pay coffee, you are on the right path.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fintech Leaders, coming to you from New York City. I'm your host, Miguel Armaza. I'm a co-founder of Gilgamesh Ventures, a venture capital fund that backs early-stage fintech entrepreneurs in the US and Latin America. If you enjoyed this conversation, I invite you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows so more people can learn about fintech leaders. In this episode, I sit down with Alberto Dalmasso, CEO and co-founder of Satispay, the largest fintech in Italy and one of the largest fintechs in Europe. Founded in 2013, Satispay has over 4 million consumers and 330,000 merchants active on the platform. What started as a payments network has now evolved to a wider financial services ecosystem and super app. Satispay has raised almost $500 million from Block, Greyhound, Addition, Coatue, Banca Sella, Endeavor, and many more. In this episode, we discuss strategies and key metrics on building one of the largest payment networks in Europe, bypassing Visa and MasterCard, finding equilibrium between aggressive growth and a culture of efficiency, and why he believes in learning through small mistakes, evolving into a wider super app for consumers, leadership lessons on handling pressure and spreading confidence instead of fear, and a lot more. Alberto, come stai?
Molto bene, grazie.
Welcome to Fintech Leaders, joining all the way from Milan, Italy.
Right.
I'm delighted. I don't know if you know, I was born in Italy, although I never really lived there. And I'm excited to interview my first guest from Italy, which I think I'm starting from the very top. I think Satispay is an example for not just Italy, but Europe and the world. And maybe we can start talking a bit about your origins, but also why build in Italy? Because I think we all know founders from Italy or builders who chose to move elsewhere, be it London, be it New York City, Silicon Valley, or elsewhere. But you've been very successful from Milan.
Yeah, I think this is quite a stigma for us in Italy that we all tend to see the best people leave, go away. I traveled a lot. I was actually thinking that I would have worked abroad. But then I studied economy and I graduated just soon after Lehman Brothers cracked down, and I saw some opportunities that could have been open, maybe in investment banking or finance in general were not open. It wasn't a great time to, just for about a year to graduate, and I started working in Italy, and I started recognizing that it wasn't so easy to pay with credit cards. And aside from that, not only paying, but also peer-to-peer money transfer, in general, the use of money wasn't that great. And I think the observation of an economy, one of many European economy where most of the shop we pay in are family-owned businesses. They don't get along very well with credit card fees, or also understanding the structure of the pricing. I think it all started by observing a local need. It is indeed a need that goes beyond Italy, but we started studying and building on a local need. We started immediately thinking big, thinking European, and we also thought about moving eventually to UK. At a certain point, we had our financial institution there, but because of Brexit, that had been moved out. But I have to say, as you start building, what happened to us, then maybe just a step back, we created an independent payment network that anybody with a bank account can use to pay in store, pay online. And it's a three-party model, a closed loop, basically, where we both have the consumer and the merchant, as PayPal does, but we don't rely on credit card networks or debit card networks. We built our infrastructure that allow us to move money around any bank accounts with an extremely low cost. So Satispay has no fee below 10 euros for the merchant and only 20 euro cents as a fixed amount above 10 euros, no matter the amount. And as we were pitching these to people we wanted to hire, potential investor, a lot of excitement started to grow. And I gotta say, there was it was received incredibly well by entrepreneur managers. And Satispay really, I think one of the reasons why we've been quite successful so far, it's because we understood that if we wanted to do like a big thing, Silicon Valley style, we should have thought that we were not in Silicon Valley. And we saw that Italy, and I remember I studied it, is the second market to Japan for private saving. So we said, okay, we may be talking with VCs in Italy, but it's clear this is not the land of VCs. Venture capitals are small. They don't have a track record. They probably will not bring any value on board. Building a fintech consumer, it's going to be really expensive, so really capital intensive. And if we need a lot of money and we're going to initially be based here, let's talk to private investors. And I think that really supported us along the way through to when we started raising from international investors 3-4 rounds later. And I think this enthusiasm was really seeing people that were extremely happy of the fact that someone in Italy was building something big. And then the ambition was huge, really created a very, very positive environment around us. And then we found ourselves with a very good setup, starting attracting talent, being quite unique, and everything started from here and ended up growing here. Then we realized later that if you are on the ground where your first few users are, you can really keep on solving their needs even better. Only many years later, we realized many things, such as that local super apps, local champions. So I think fintechs, some of the biggest fintech success across the world are local champions. And I think that also, there is a realization that came while we were building Satispay, while we were growing and we were questioning, should we think global? Should we start immediately internationalizing? And then we started realizing that those that become really big, that they go really deeper into solving the local needs, becoming the local champions. And eventually we ended up staying here. We do have people abroad. We are growing also outside of Italy, but there's still a lot of room to grow over here because of these 80% of our people are here in Milano.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned at the beginning that most SMBs in Italy, they're family owned. I can picture it, right? The father, the son, and the daughter, they're working in the counter, and they don't have, like you say, a good relationship with the networks because of the high fees. And also Italy is notoriously famous for lack of trust in financial institutions, but you have managed to build this trust. Tell us, going back to the beginning, the first merchants, the first users that you onboard, how did you start to build that trust?
I think the idea was always to make things simple. So at the end, I gotta say, there's no trust, but at the end, they all trust the bank. There's just not the trust that the bank is gonna provide a great product or be completely transparent. In fact, I remember I already mentioned this pricing of nothing below 10 euros and 20% above. And this comes from the fact that because we are the only player taking money out of the consumer bank account, putting money into the merchant bank account, we control all the money movement and we can control the pricing, while the big networks are distributed by the banks, and each and every bank with the relationship with the merchant then define the price. And we realized that the main problem is not even that is expensive, but it's the fact that it's not clear. I think the network will love to tell the cost and write it everywhere around the cities, but they are not in control of that. At the end, it's distributed by the bank. So we realized that the merchants have no idea. And they simply don't know. They feel that there's a percentage, then there's maybe a fixed amount, then there's maybe a monthly fee, and there's something that I gotta pay sometimes where I get the information of quarterly information. And so they prefer to say no for transaction below 10 euros. And we said, okay, if we can make it clear that below 10 is free, and we can talk about that, it's gonna be understood and perceived as something simple and easy. So there was one thing. It was also dictated by the fact that when we were defining the pricing, we were thinking about a 0.5% to be lower than debit and much lower than credit cards and no other fees. And we were telling there's no monthly fees, 0.5% as a test before even launching the product. And some shops were saying, so it's 5 cents out of €1. I said, no, it's half a cent out of €1. But the fact we needed to explain that means that probably for some people, the percentage is not like immediate. And if you are in a place where you go around and you see no cards below 10, okay, let's play with that. Let's make it clear and let's talk loudly about this to the point that even the consumer will know. And in fact, the consumer started realizing that if they saw our sticker in shop, it meant they could even pay a single espresso with Satispay, because they knew the merchant will not be like not saying no, but sometimes even just say, oh, can you pay with cash? Why? Okay. But it's not pleasant. You feel you're not doing something that makes your friend behind the counter happy. And that was one thing. So playing with being extremely transparent by being extremely different. The other thing was making sure that we're proposing something new, something on top, because everybody has a card reader since forever in Italy. They might have used to say no, now things have changed and evolved, but they might have used to say no for certain amounts, but they already have it in integration with the cash register software and maybe another card reader for meal vouchers and other stuff. So what you don't want to do is to ask them to buy another device or to go through an integration. So I think the reason why we now have 330,000 merchants is because we decided to be a software solution that can work on anything the merchant have on the counter. So originally the merchant needed to use a smartphone or a tablet. Then we created also the desktop application for any computer. And then we created an API that had been integrated by any cash register software solution. So that became probably even more important than the price. And the fact that you can go into a shop and say, oh, you can start accepting this payment network, is cheap or definitely not more expensive than others. You don't need to buy anything new. It works on what you have. It is really important, because they may not feel the need. You're little, they don't see a lot of consumer using it at the beginning. So you really have to make sure that they have no reason to say no. They will say, okay, fine, it's not expensive, and if it eventually takes off, it's going to be better than what I accept today. And also tell them it's going to be, money are going to be on your bank account the next working day. So many startups not creating the connection to the bank accounts, keeping the money there, and if you want, then you send the money out. But when they accept cards, the money go on their bank account. So they have to not change any behavior. And I think really being extremely focused on all the reasons they could have said no, so that selling to merchant will be easy. And then we could start building the consumer side. And the third thing is that we always played a lot with our image. And basically, Satispay, many, many years ago, was definitely the first fintech player in Europe that only communicated with cartoon drawing. So the Satis people are known all around Italy and are this funny figure, totally informal, designed by hand that represent us, represent our consumers, our merchant. And what I personally wanted to express with that was the feeling that we were different. Because I think more than lacking trust, in Italy, the consumers and the merchant feel that the banking solutions are working and not working that well. And the bankers are these suit and tie people that have this very formal figure to create distance and protect themselves and say, okay, I'm a bank. I don't need to be cool. I'm a bank and my online banking is not simple because it's a serious thing. It's not a social network. People don't believe to that anymore. So the feeling we wanted people to feel is, oh, it's so easy. Of course, but because it's them. It's people like us. They designed it. And these are not people that if I have to do a video call are going to ask the personal assistant to set up the computer, show up late with the microphone not working. These are people like us. Of course, they are using a great product. And I think, yes, really showing a completely different image, having red instead of blue and green, which are always the financial institution colors, and playing with design and cartoons and being extremely simple, one single cost, not even in a percentage, really helped us grow and become immediately the app to pay your coffee, which is obviously not the final ambition, but if you want to become a daily behavior, and in Italy people tell they're using you to pay coffee, you are on the right path.
And 330,000 merchants, that's double-digit percentages for Italy, right? How did you start conquering? So I get the messaging and the strategy. How about go-to-market? Did you focus on neighborhood by neighborhood, city by city, or did you take a different approach? How did you grow to the number you are today?
Again, we knew nothing at all, and we didn't even thought about that, but we needed, of course, the two sides, and that's very complicated. So now we pair the 330,000 merchants with 4.5 million consumer, but we were very naive, I gotta say, and we thought, okay, we're gonna have a peer-to-peer in store and online, and the peer-to-peer is gonna grow by itself alone so much that then we're gonna say, oh, we have millions of consumer and the merchant will all jump on. But peer-to-peer have always been appreciated, but it never really triggered this kind of huge adoption. And we realized that what people were really looking for was the reason why we started thinking about Satispay, that we didn't like the fact that we had to withdraw cash to pay in store. And so we realized that we needed to sign up shops. And as soon as we understood that, we really started working on a city by city approach. And I gotta say, for very few days, we started thinking about, okay, let's go around the big universities in Milano and let's sign up the cafes around the universities. But then I also said, okay, we are us, the three founders from Cuneo, which is a 60,000 inhabitant city in the northwest of Italy. And we knew we had already like a bunch of friends using Satispay because they knew us. We said, okay, why don't we ask someone there that knows merchant to talk with the merchants, and we try things there. And in 6 months, it really exploded. And I remember after having spent 110,000 euros in marketing, the Satispay was already known by everybody and growing like crazy in that city, that the job was done and the city was growing by itself. And I think that saved us at the beginning, because if we would have stick to, let's make it work in the big city, there was a lot of this in the startup world. You got to prove it in the big city, and then you got to prove it's going to be international. No, you got to learn lessons by doing small mistakes. And in a small city, you can do very small mistakes. So we realized we needed to be merchant first. We perfected the pitch. We started like talking more and more with the merchants, onboarding the merchants. And then we started offering some cashback in specific days so that all the merchants were happy to say, oh, come back on Friday because there's a cashback with Satispay. So they had us spread the words. People will sign up and get on board. You do the cashback, you build it, you understand there could be opportunistic approach to that, maybe frauds related to that, you correct it, but in a small city with a very small cost. And so then we perfected this playbook where we were going into several cities, getting to get the first few merchants in the city center, launch a cashback every Friday for a while, get to 5% of population, push referral by asking active user to invite other user. And it was just about doing it in multiple cities at the same time. We started trying it in a lot of cities. We came to the point where we also had some local banks sponsoring us because they said, okay, this is a competitor, but actually this is like Visa, MasterCard. I'm already distributing something else. And since compared to the card networks, Satispay can go direct to merchant, I can be the only bank proposing it and putting myself in a better position. So to a certain point, we were basically growing in every single city. And then we realized that there are some magic numbers like 15, 20, 25% of population active. And because money we didn't have an infinite amount of money, we decided to work on 5 different cities, big enough to get them to those percentage and then grow. And now we are growing in about 60 cities at the same time. And this is generating an overall national growth because somewhere you do direct investment, somewhere else just because it's in the neighbors, things grow spontaneously. But it's hard because it's a two-sided. So I'm not giving you a card that you can use everywhere, or not giving you a POS that can accept any payment solution. I'm trying to build the payment network. And therefore, I got to build the two sides. But once you get to a certain size, and it's really tough, but once you get there, you own everything. And you own the relationship with the consumer, you own the relationship with the merchant, you can start upselling, and network effect start accelerating.
You mentioned you'll learn about these magic numbers, 15, 20, 25% of, I guess, citizens in that city, or can you share more, a little bit more about those magic numbers?
Yeah, so it is at the end more complicated than that, and every day we learn more. But basically, if you target a city of less than 1 million inhabitants, which are most of the cities, you can see the city behaving in a different way. The more citizens are active and the more merchants are active. And it tends to be aligned. So you get to 5, 10, 15% of merchant penetration a few months before you get to that same percentage with consumers. And you see the customer acquisition cost going down and the number of transactions per monthly active user going up. So we used to be like 2, 3, 4, 5 transactions, and then we on average we have 11 transactions a month. But in the cities above 25%, we have 18 to 22 transactions a month, depending on the city. And considering that we are also live on e-commerce, but e-commerce is growing a lot only this year, that will probably add like 6-7 transactions a month. So in those cities, we're basically a daily product. But and alongside that, we have basically almost no cost to acquire user in those cities, and they monetize more. So you typically want to grow with a ratio of 1 shop per 10 consumer. And at the end, that means that the percentage of penetration are going to be very, very close. The thing with consumer, you can have all consumers, initially only above 18, and now since about a month and a half, even above 14. On the merchant, if you actually look at the most important zip codes where most of the population will spend time and category, which are, especially at the beginning, food-related, pharmacies, very high frequency, and maybe transportation and similar. Probably we saw that having 25% of those means you basically, of the merchants in a city, means that in the right districts, in the right zip codes, and in the right category, you have almost all of them. So it's about getting to 25% of the cafes, restaurants in the city center, and then build, and then eventually you get to higher percentage, and everything grows. How you do that is everything to learn, because you may go like pitch door to door, do out-of-home advertising, performance marketing, but at the end it's all about mixing many acquisition channel, and in each and every step of the growth and penetration, different acquisition channel work in a different way, and we are all focusing on sophisticating the model and the playbook every day more and more. We are much faster now, but we still can improve massively the way we onboard merchants and consumers.
You talk about making small mistakes in small cities and how you learn the value of making small mistakes. It sounds like that experience early on in the company has had a big effect on the overall culture today. Maybe share how has that influenced the operation today?
Yeah, I think Satispay had to build a culture where people are aware of the value of money, resources in general, where we tend to prefer to build processes and scalability before hiring. We never really went mad, overhired. And I think it really built a company culture where there's always a bit of challenge. But because we had to challenge everything. So I remember, you got to go and be in an incubator. No, actually not. There's no one there that can really help. So you got to take money from venture capital. Actually not, because they are too small here, and the American ones they're not looking in Italy right now. They then eventually did, but you gotta go immediately international. So at a certain point, all these narratives really started making us kind of laugh, and everybody around us have always been, no, we gotta prove things first. We gotta prove things first, and we gotta reiterate. We gotta perfect it, and it really helped us, but to a point where then probably was even too much. I gotta say, when we, for the first time, had proper investments, and over time we raised the 455 euro millions, but most of it came from after 2020, when we exceeded the first 1 million consumers. We never built the muscle of growth. So I remember it took about 1 year to really push managers and people, organization and recruiter to say, okay, if we struggle coping with this growth, we can also hire. Because it was always like, let's figure out what we can do without hiring. Now we are to the point where we are still hiring a lot, but implementing a lot of automation and creating even more and more efficiency. But the company culture was so strong on taking the maximum out of very, very limited resources that when we could overgrow, we really had to change the culture and push everybody to to hire, to take some more risk. And I think now we're balancing it properly. So after a couple of years of extremely high growth, we're now going back and we changed some company pillars and also talking more again about being resource conscious. And I like where we are right now, where we know how to grow. We know where we cannot have to get crazy and creative. But on the other side, we are thinking again deeply that every single euro counts.
You've launched more than a single product today. Number one, maybe tell us a little bit about how the offering looks. And also, I'd love to hear, what do you challenge your team to think about before launching any new product feature or anything like that?
Absolutely. So our vision is really wrapped around the power of a payment network, where if we think about financial services, there are payments, loan, investments, insurance, and money transfer with the currency exchange. So 5 main products, and payment is at the base of each and every one of it and is the most frequently used. And so our idea was, let's make sure that we are the payment solution used for very frequent transactions so that we establish a strong relationship with our active user. And then we can eventually start offering other things. And so we started from in-store payment, which is 74% of our transaction, peer-to-peer money transfer 18%. And then we started saying, okay, what are things that most of the population use that we can do in a better way? So most of Italians have a prepaid phone credit account and they top up once a month. Can we make it simpler? Yes. Okay, so this is something we developed. E-commerce, of course, we're having a mobile solution that is connected to a single phone that's two-factor authentication in it. So you basically just go on a website. If it's desktop, you scan the dynamic QR code and you confirm the transaction without username and password. That was an easy one. But the value-added services, where once you have in-store payment, online payment, and peer-to-peer, you can top up your phone credit, you can top up your Amazon account, you can pay any government payment, tax payment, bill payments, and you can set aside money in money boxes, and you can make donations to big causes that typically have a national impact. And all of these were things that got us challenging. Is most of the population going to appreciate it? And can we propose something that is marginally better, significantly better, not marginally, than what they currently are using today? Okay, if so, let's launch it. And people started really appreciating it because an app that they know very well because they use for small, frequent transaction that they trust. If it's the same app that in a simple way allow them to pay the road tax, the tax attached to owning a vehicle, that is very complicated. You gotta go in a physical office or find the right website to pay it on. In Satispay, you just type the number plate of your vehicle and we calculate it and you pay it. So these things have really contributed into consolidating the image of being the solution that simplifies your life. And every time we launch an additional service, from 45 to 65% of the monthly active user jump on that. So this is really, really strengthening our relationship with our users. And to the point that people started also saving on Satispay, so putting money aside in money boxes, initially because the app that you use for food and small payment became also the app to pay taxes. Okay, so let me create a money box where I put aside every day some money. So the day I have to pay the taxes, I've saved for that. And this created the feeling that, oh, if I can, I pay with Satispay because it's better, because I keep track of the transaction, I put money aside, I plan my big expenses. And then we started looking on the merchant side, and merchants love Satispay, it's transparent, it's cheap, and they always said, hey, Satispay, you are making electronic payment cheaper, but one big problem we have are meal vouchers. And meal vouchers are huge in Italy, France, Brazil, These are the biggest market and they're growing almost everywhere. But basically, employers can pay part of the salary with meal vouchers, which are cheaper for the employers because are tax exempt and can be used to buy food, to go to restaurants, to go to groceries. And the market is a bit crazy. It's a very few player, fees above 15% to the merchants. And we realized we already had 70,000 of our active shop that could be accepting meal voucher. And instead of even trying to partner with a meal voucher provider, we became a meal voucher provider ourselves. And that started tying up with the fact that we could build a better product again, because now when you go buy something with meal voucher, you got to insert the meal voucher card. You can use a certain daily meal voucher that have a fixed amount, and then you got to top up with something else. With Satispay, you just do one transaction, and we calculate what you can use with meal voucher, what you can use with your own money. So we knew we could build the best user experience by far. We knew merchant would have appreciated it. And it's something that today is used by 4 million workers in Italy, but 20 million workers have a tax advantage in adopting it. So we are predicting a huge growth on that. And we jumped on that opportunity. But again, knowing a big chunk of our merchant could use it. Therefore, we could have a great proposition to the consumers, and that could have attract a lot of users. And this tied also into the playbook, because it's now changing the playbook, because we keep on growing our consumer with referrals, active user inviting other user, paid media, performance marketing, so on and so forth. But we can also use our B2B sales ability, not only to acquire merchants, but also to pitch employers to adopt our meal voucher solution and bring on their employees. So there's also this B2B2C acquisition channel that has really changed how we grow by adding a new acquisition channel. And so the vision is to keep on being the payment solution for the frequent transaction and all the transactions that used to be a bit of a waste of time and complicated, so that people always have a wow effect and tend to use Satispay for everything. Get into the employer's benefit space because it's just going to grow massively. So now we started with meal voucher, then we're going to add every employer's benefit, from paying for health insurance, education, pension funds. And eventually one thing that I would like is go back to investment and maybe allow people that are now only saving money on Satispay also invest those money.
Is there a North Star when it comes to companies you admire around the world?
Well, I think we want to be the most used payment solution in Europe, and we do look at local champions, and you can go from the obvious Alipay and WeChat Pay that have over 1 billion users and move most of the local transaction to GoPay in Indonesia and Dana in Indonesia to Toast South Korea, Kaspi in Kazakhstan. So I gotta say we are extremely fascinated about what is going on east of the world, what is going on south, since M-Pesa launched many years ago in Kenya and Tanzania. On the other side, of course, you look at US for some well-designed products such as Cash App. Blocker also one of our investors. It is different. It's kind of more challenger bank, but the peer-to-peer side of it is very extreme and at the center of that. So for product design, that's definitely one we like to take inspiration from. But from the ambition point of view, this super app that become the daily app in the hands of the local consumers are what we are targeting. And I always like to say to our few millions of users is, okay, tell me, apart from Satispay, is there an app on your phone that you open every day that is not American or Chinese? Thinking about TikTok or the Chinese one. And they say, no, the only European one is Satispay. Or for someone passionate about music is also Spotify. But it's that. So becoming that for not only millions of Italians, but tens of millions of European citizens.
Yeah, happy to say that some of those companies you mentioned are, like, for example, Kaspi, Mihail, the CEO, is going to come on the podcast as well.
That's an amazing story.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And not told enough. Just like Satispay, not told enough outside of Europe or outside of Italy. Let me ask you this. When we spoke in the past, you mentioned that your first round, I think it was around $5 million. And at the time, it was the biggest VC round in Italy for that stage. And every single round after that has been record breaking. Share a little bit about your fundraising strategy.
Yeah. So as I said, actually, before that, there was a very small seed round. And I remember we simply built on the fact that a lot of friends were telling us, oh, it's so cool that you and Dario, you left your previous job, you're giving everything for it. Can I invest? So in 2013, we shoot a video with my iPhone and would send it to 60 friends, and 52 of them invested very little amount, and we raised 300,000 euros. We put some money ourselves, so we had about 400,000 euros to spend. We started hiring. And then when we wasted a bit of time speaking with Italian VCs, we realized that they were too little, not competent, not able to help us. And we said, okay, but why don't we do the same when we speak with a bunch of private individuals? It's going to probably be easier if we wanted to raise 2.5 million. We talked to 25 people that can put 100,000. And it's probably going to be easier to find them than to find a single VC putting 2.5 million. And when we found those people that were ready to invest as angel investor, 2.5 million, one of the biggest Italian bank, the holding of the small local bank, decided to invest themselves to 2.5 million. And luckily, I convinced them that it was better to raise 5, double what we initially intended. And that was back in 2014, the biggest venture round that was ever done in Italy, period. No stage B, D, C, Z. No one have ever raised so much. And that was fun. That was okay because it created a lot of PR that helped us grow at the beginning, but it's not that easy when every time no one did something as big as that. And again, I would say angel investors for us have always been really angels, because they were always like granting us the trust and the 50-60% of each and every round up until, because we did another, immediately when we raised the money, we stayed stealth for another 6 months. And then we said, okay, now the product is out. We are Satispay. We're ready to rock. We've raised 5 million. Other private investors came in with other 3 millions just because of the news. And that allowed us to work for a couple of years. And then we raised, I remember, about 18.5 million. And it was after we dedicated a lot of time to an institutional that pulled back at the beginning. And again, having the ability to start opening around with angel investors, and then some institutional came later, saved us. And then we did the first round with a couple of UK funds, but that put it together about 6 million in a 15 million round. Again, most of it was private individuals. And I gotta say, the governance was perfect because we were controlling the company. All these angel investors had no specific rights and extremely manageable. And then that has allowed us to get to 2019, 2020, where we exceeded 1 million users, 100,000 merchants. And we were the only one the international VCs had to talk to. So they would say, okay, typically, when we take time to look into an Italian company, they are over-diluted and the governance is in the hands of these funds, local funds, that are not really bringing a lot of values. So at least here we are in a company where we can talk governance, talk investments with the founders. So 2020, the largest local telco invested and was followed up by Tencent, Square, now called Block, LGT, and a couple of other funds. And then in 2022, Addition came in, great investor, followed by other existing investor. We did 300, and the one with Block, Tencent, was 90 million. and the last one was 320 million. And that really changed completely what we are. So it got us to the point where we realized the vision did not change, but we finally have the money and the name out also to attract talent. And in the past 2 years, it's been about experimenting hyper growth and surround ourselves with amazing people that we've been able to move to Italy from all the world and make things happen faster and faster.
Alberto, one last question. In the past, you've told me that you're very passionate about water polo and sailing. Maybe tell us why you like the two, and also how does that relate to leadership in business?
I love all sports in general, but probably with ski, but it's a bit more, and climbing are more individual. Water polo and sailing are two things that really changed my life. It's because they are a team sport. And I remember both in water polo, I ended up being the team captain for many years. And in sailing, I became skipper, really keeping the group together in very tough sports, because water polo is brutal. I mean, you have to swim in a 33-meter long, 25-meter width pool and complete the action in 33 seconds while someone is trying to beat you and make you drown. But you got to keep the team together. And sailing is probably even beyond that, because you are dealing with something much bigger than you, which is the ocean that can kill you. But if you do the right things, it gives you the best experience. And I really learned that what I really loved about sailing was always bringing people that have never sailed before and making them understood how easy it could be, how pleasant it could be. And even in tough situations, never raise the voice and show that they can count on you. I always created the ideal solution where people feel confident because you are confident. And I think that really helped me maintain this very cool approach. And even with my co-founder, I remember when some investor maybe pulled back last minute, we had to rebuild the round or really take on very big challenges. The fact that we ended up saying, okay, we were starting to, it was a bit boring because everything was kind of functioning. Now there's action again. And I think from sports, it comes to the realization that when there are big challenges ahead of you, you just gotta get on and try to solve them without thinking about the problem and only thinking the solution and enjoying the process. And I think that really gave me the ability to lead a team that is bigger and bigger and that is passionate about taking on bigger challenges, because we don't spread fear, but we tend to spread confidence.
Alberto, I think this whole conversation has been a masterclass on entrepreneurship, on leadership. It's just inspiring overall. I'm sure it's going to inspire a lot of people, just like your story has to date. So thank you for sharing with us and spending this whole time with us.
Very kind. Thank you. It's been a great pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this great episode with Alberto Dalmasso, CEO of Satispay. If you want more interviews, make sure to subscribe, follow, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. It helps and truly means a lot. And if you have any suggestions or thoughts about the show, please reach out and drop me a line on Twitter or LinkedIn. Signing off till next week, I'm your host, Miguel Armaza.